So if they had the giant snake the whole time, why didn't they just use it right away? When the pitch is Guy Ritchie doing King Arthur, you pretty much have to know what you're getting in for. What's shocking is that the movie you're expecting out of that, a bog standard early 2000s style British street hooligan romp but set in medieval times, is actually the best stuff in the movie. Seriously, every time Ritchie gets to do his time-skipping, multi-plane narrative, fast-forward, rewind, inner lives of grimy London gutter thugs thing, but now we're in basically one of the shittier parts of Westeros, that's when King Arthur Legend of the Sword briefly becomes an interesting movie. Unfortunately, he only breaks it out as a way to blow through the exposition. Otherwise, we're stuck in a wholly generic dark fantasy movie whose starting premise seems to have been, oh, you think the last King Arthur movie sucked. But while it is genuinely odd to realize that we haven't seen a traditional King Arthur movie on screen since Excalibur back in '81, in theory there's nothing wrong with trying to do something new and different with such old material. Legend of the Sword, however, only gets to the different part, gutting the Camelot story of almost all its recognizable details and replacing them with what feels more than anything like a Robin Hood movie reworked along the lines of a Nolan Batman movie, but with a magic sword shoved into the plot so it can be a King Arthur movie. To wit, in this version, King Uther is the wise and just, true and rightful king of ancient England who used his magic sword Excalibur to defeat the evil wizard Mordred, but was betrayed by his power-seeking brother Vortigern, who uses the dark magic of his own to murder the royal family, but fails to kill the toddler Arthur, who gets baby Moses down a river, grows up in a brothel, and later becomes the leader of a gang of street-tough outlaws with hearts of gold. But when Excalibur is rediscovered inside a stone, Vortigern uses it as a test to find Uther's lost heir, Arthur's true heritage is revealed, and the good witch Guinevere is dispatched to train him to use his newfound superhuman fighting skills to lead a revolution, and God, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. It's just, trying to recap all of that makes my brain physically hurt. And also, we're shooting 2 of these tonight, so yeah, little peek behind the curtain. Which of these are we doing again? King Arthur, yeah. And all of that's not even getting into the astonishing deluge of backstory about a war between humans and wizards, mages, Excalibur being forged out of Mordred's stolen magic wand, the Lady of the Lake still somehow needing to be involved in that for some reason, Vortigern having his own evil water spirit ladies who can briefly turn him into an enemy from Dark Souls so he can fight better, Merlin technically being out there somewhere as Guinevere's master but never really showing up, Arthur having to go off on some kind of vision quest to a magic island to confront some dark truth about his origin story, but it doesn't yield any new information for the audience. Vortigern's big evil plan essentially being to build a giant tower that I think is going to increase the Wi-Fi range of his magic. And lest you think that all of this mess might at least be eventful and therefore entertaining, it's all stretched out over 2 of just the most punishing and uninteresting hours of film I've been forced to spend in a movie theater since I slogged thanklessly through a Monster Calls a few months back. It just goes on and on and on through ugly cinematography, uninspired action scenes, what feels like thousands of interchangeable, uninteresting side characters, all trying in vain to distract us from the fact that most of the time we're still stuck with human charisma vacuum Charlie Hunnam, a guy who was barely even interesting when he had Idris Elba, Rinko Kikuchi, and giant robots to back him up. The only characters to make any impact are Jude Law as Vortigern because, that dude's pretty much always good, and I don't know why people don't like him, and Astrid Bergès-Frisbee as Guinevere, mostly thanks to her interesting interpretation of speaking English and her seeming insistence of being a commanding on-screen presence who nonetheless keeps making the worst fucking movies. Supposedly, Ritchie and his people originally pitched this whole thing as a Lord of the Rings style multi-movie epic, but at some point the studio decided they were good with just one. And even though it unquestionably led to a lot of the nonsensical plot issues, I feel like I should thank them for that, I guess. I mean, look, however we got to this point, the bottom line is it's too goddamn long, it's boring as hell, it's hideously ugly to watch, it makes no sense whatsoever unless you already have a working knowledge of the King Arthur mythology, and it'll royally piss you off if you do. 1 star. I said 1 star. Please don't go see this. I don't want to have to watch another one in like 2 years.